I'd like to call the special meeting of our Elmhurst City Council. Today is Monday, May 11th. I'd like to all stand and state the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we need to establish a quorum, so I'd ask our lovely clerk, Patty Spencer, to call the roll.
Gutenkopf. Here. Pezza.
Here.
Shea.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
York.
Here.
Nybo.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Morley.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
14 present, 0 absent.
Thank you, Clerk Spencer. We now have a quorum. And number 3 on the item, reports and recommendations of appointed and elected officials. Letter A is appointment of Attorney Donald J. Storino as our new city attorney for the city of Elmhurst. I would just like to say that I am pleased that we took the extra week. I think it brought deliberation and a conclusion to, I think, what will be an excellent future for the city of Elmhurst and independent council. And I would ask for a motion. Alderman Gutenkopf, Alderman Shea. Any discussion? All righty. Alderman Rose.
Thank you. I'm just, look, I actually do have my glasses on tonight, so. I just want to make a few comments about this. I've thought about this long and hard. Done a lot of work looking at this, thinking about this, and I want to say a couple of things about it. One, I want to make sure that it's very clear that everyone in this chambers and everyone watching here has a clear understanding that Kubica, Spiroff, Gosler, Piper, and Acker have served the city of Elmhurst extremely well in the past, I don't know, number of years. When I came here as an alderman 18 years ago, they were the current council, and I have found them to be helpful, extremely qualified. I've worked more closely with Assistant City Attorney Harlan Spiroff, who I always found to be incredibly knowledgeable, available, and provide the highest quality of professional services. I think that they have been a real asset to this community, and that's the first thing I want to say is I think that they've done a tremendous job for us. I also want to say that the mayor mentioned last week a handful of aldermen who were concerned about this. I would like to, in the service of honesty and openness and transparency, I would consider myself among that handful. I had some concern about the process. I had some concern about the swiftness of the process. I appreciate the opportunity to have met with Mr. Storino, Mr. Durkin, and Mr. Romello this evening. I think that was very helpful. I thought they answered all of our questions. They answered my questions, at least, in particular questions about any current relationships or previous relationships, personal, financial, political, with any one of us on the dais, city manager, new mayor. I received an answer to that question that was certainly reasonable, that no such conflict did exist. So I am, I want to say clearly, while the personal viewpoint one might have about any of these attorneys, you have a right to have that personal viewpoint. But for me, the process and our understanding of the law and the code and the ordinance of Elmhurst borders on the sacred to me. That despite my own personal opinion about whether who I think is qualified, I would have preferred to see a more extended look at this. I would have preferred to see a greater evaluation of our legal services in relation to the proposed proposed attorney. I would have preferred a number of things, but in my mind, the process is much more important than my preference. So I will support this. It may not be my preference, but I will support this because the process to me is much more important than my own personal view on this. So I will go ahead and support this.
Thank you, Alderman Rose. Alderman Mulliner.
I would echo a lot of what Alderman Rose said. We've dealt with the city attorney for the current city attorney for the past 23 years, and he's done a terrific job for the city, helping us to implement a number of things such as TIF districts, etc. We have a very complicated city here. We have a lot of things going on, a lot of different processes going on, a lot of lawsuits that continue to come in, and they're handled very professionally by our current law firm. I do appreciate the opportunity for us to have this opportunity to meet the new attorney this evening. I shouldn't say the new attorney, the proposed attorney. I too have some concerns about the process, and I think it's something that we're going to need to look at down the road as soon as we complete this one so that we can move forward. I want to make one thing really clear. I've sat on this dais for the last 10 years, and during those 10 years, I've always voted my mind on what's in the best interest, what I feel is in the best interest of Elmhurst. Not what I feel the other aldermen want, what the mayor wants. It's my job to step forward and say what I think is in the best interest of Elmhurst. I will continue to vote that way. I'll continue to vote that way this evening as well as every other evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Anybody else? Alderman Shea.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have had a lot less time to look at a lot more things than the new city attorney. We had 2 weeks to call all the references, check thoroughly into their background, how they were rated and things like that. I think we've had plenty of time. They have a very impressive resume. They have a long list of municipalities and that they work for, a lot of experience. Their rating, they have an AV rating. It's very, very high. It's the highest level of professional excellence. And after talking to all their references, not only saying that their work is exceptional, but they say they're well respected, loyal, and honest. And thank you.
Thanks, Alderman. Anybody else?
Sure.
Alderman Brown.
Thank you. I think that what you're hearing tonight is really the discussion of the process and what occurred over the last week and a half. I do appreciate Mayor DeCiani extending the extra week, because even though I did vet as much as I can vet over the internet, calling the references, as Alderman Shea has just stated as well, it did give me additional time to follow up with additional references and speak with others that did know Storino to see exactly where their strong points were and the opinions out there in the attorney field. So I just want to say that I appreciate the extra time. It has been well vetted. Mayor DeCiani did state last week as well as this week that he has vetted multiple firms. I think that we as a council had the opportunity about a week and a half ago to do so, but the last week, an additional week to do so as well. So I just want to encourage everybody to move forward with this appointment. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Brown. Anyone else? With no one else, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Shea.
Aye.
Pezza.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Nybo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Morley.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
No.
Wagner.
Aye.
13 ayes, 1 nays. Motion carries.
I now ask City Manager Borchard to make a statement as well.
In light of the council manager form of government, which we enjoy in the city of Elmhurst, I am pleased to support the mayor and the council in this endeavor, and I hereby appoint Donald J. Storino of the law firm of Storino, Romello, and Durkin to serve as the attorney for the city of Elmhurst, effective immediately, but practically tomorrow morning, 5/12/09.
Thank you, City Manager Borchert. And I thank the council for being as united as possible in making this appointment. I look forward to working with Mr. Storino in the future. So, letter B is the Fire Station 2 lockers. I asked City Manager Borchert and Chief Kopp to talk about that, and also asked Clerk Spencer to actually call that motion. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No.
The recommendation?
Read the recommendation.
There we go. Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
Patty.
This is a report from City Manager Borchert and Fire Chief Kopp. It is therefore recommended that the City Council approve the selection of Holman, Inc. for $26,790 for the man's/woman's wood lockers for new Fire Station Number 2. Respectfully submitted, Thomas P. Borchert, City Manager, and Michael D. Kopp, Fire Chief.
Alrighty. City Manager Borchert.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Typically, this report would have been vetted at a committee meeting, and that committee report would have then been forwarded to the full City Council. But in light of the process of transition and in light of the timing necessary to keep this project on schedule, there was a need for the full City Council to deal with the Fire Station 2 locker acquisition. At this time, waiting for the committee and waiting for a council meeting would have potentially put the project a bit at risk. Chief Kopp is available to answer any more specific questions which the council may have. The item is for the equipment, as has been the past practice of all of the contractors and subcontractors and material suppliers. The intention here is to approve the low bid meeting the required specifications. That is what is before you. The proposal from Holman Incorporated meets the specifications of the low qualified bidder at $26,790 and would again request that the City Council formally approve the acquisition. If any questions, we'd be pleased to attempt to answer those.
Very good. I'll need a motion and a second on this. Motion, Alderman Healy, second by Alderman Mulliner. Any discussion? Alderman Shea?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for Chief Kopp. This had come through our committee, and when we were looking through the finances, when it came to the about the lockers and things like that, we suggested that how about more of a middle of the road type of wood instead of the red oak doors for the interior and the butcher block benches. We were talking about maybe, did you go for an estimate about different prices for different grades of, quality from lower end to the high end? Or did we just go to this?
If Chief Kopp could get to this is a special council meeting and therefore it's being taped, and the taping doesn't work without the audio. So the audio works with the.
Yeah, we looked at a variety, and this is this isn't a solid wood cabinet. The doors are solid wood. A recommendation of the contractor for upkeep and maintenance, and for how long they will last. The rest of the cabinet's a laminate cabinet with a type of particle board, which meets the LEED certification. There's no urethanes in there, or and just the construction of it. It's certified wood, which met the LEED certification for the project.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Healy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Pezza.
Aye.
Shea.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Nybo.
Aye.
Morley.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
All right.
Carries.
Motion carries. Now to item C, which is a secondary number 6 clarifier drive repairs, being recommended by City Manager Borchert and the Director of Water and Wastewater Stryker. I would ask Clerk Spencer to call the recommendation, please.
It is therefore recommended that the City Council approve the purchase of a placement drive for the wastewater plant secondary clarifier number 6 from Walker Process Equipment Aurora, Illinois, for $27,500. Funds for this purchase are available in the equipment maintenance budget, 510-605.7-502.50.08.
All righty.
And this is signed by, Thomas P. Borchard, City Manager, and Dennis Stryker, Director of Water and Wastewater.
And now I'd like to ask for a motion and a second, please. Alderman Rose, Alderman York. Any discussion? Mr. Borchard?
Just quickly and in a similar fashion, timing was such that it would be best for this piece of equipment to be put back online. The equipment itself is only available through Walker Process. Elmhurst does enjoy a preferred purchase rate with Walker Process, but they are the only supplier possible. The equipment needs to be compatible with the equipment that's actually at the wastewater treatment plant site, and in that regard, this Walker equipment is it's a reasonable price. It's a preferred price to Elmhurst as a preferred user of equipment. Mr. Stryker is here should there be questions which the council would ask that are over my general understanding and ability to answer. With this equipment authorized to be purchased, the equipment would be put back online on an expedited basis.
Any discussion? Alderman Healy?
Is this a budget expense?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Anybody else?
Can I get a little explanation as to what this piece of equipment actually does and what the system is it's servicing?
Sounds good. Alderman Kennedy is asking for an explanation. Mr. Borchard?
Mr. Stryker, could you give us a brief description? Mr. Stryker loves to explain these things.
I love this stuff. It's a secondary clarifier is the secondary treatment level at the wastewater plant. It's a circular tank. It has a flow rate of about 3.5 million gallons a day, and the drive mechanism is kind of a lazy Susan sort of drive that will drive rakes and whatnot around the tank, collecting settled material and returning it to the head of the plant.
And that's what's broke and needs to be fixed.
It's the center drive and the whole assembly that is worn out and needs to be replaced. We priced out individual repair parts, and the cost of individual parts came to just about the same as a complete new unit, actually minus the motor and gear reducer. So we're getting a whole motor and gear reducer along with that.
We answer your question, Mr. Kennedy? All righty. Anybody else?
Yeah, it looks like we've gotten about 18 years of service out of this, if I do my math correctly. 15 the year before. Is this kind of a normal cycle then?
This piece of equipment runs 24/7. It never stops running. It's not unusual after 20-plus years, thereabouts, see something like that go. In this case, it was actually probably a weather-related as well as stress-related that caused it to go.
Thank you.
But not unusual.
Thanks, Alderman York. Anybody else? Okay. Alderman Kennedy?
Is there something from the failure that we can learn that will help us maintain the other systems that we have in terms of, preventive maintenance, lubrication schedules, those types of things, so that the useful life can be lengthened?
Our maintenance schedules are manufacturer recommended maintenance schedules. We do change oil. We drain all the condensate out of these things so we don't have any kind of corrosion as a result. I don't think there is. I think that it's just a matter of having worn out.
Thank you.
Alderman Wagner?
One last thing. How many of these containers do we have?
We have 6 secondary clarifiers. This is number 6 of 6. We have 4 primary clarifiers. We have 3 excess flow clarifiers. All are the same general design, although different sizes.
Okay. Is there any projection to another expense like this coming up in 12 months from now?
Well, this was an unanticipated one. I know there was a question of whether it was budgeted. We do have a budgeted equipment repair budget, that we take money from for these sorts of unforeseen repairs. There is a replacement schedule that is budgeted for, but we tend to try and maximize the maintenance on these things maximize that time. Some of these tanks have been in use. Actually, we just repaired one that was put in 1954, and it just repaired it 2 years ago. So,
Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Wagner. Anybody else? Hearing no more discussion, I'd like to ask our lovely clerk, Katie Spencer, to call the roll.
Rose.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Pezza.
Aye.
Shea.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Nybo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Morley.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
Motion is passed. On to item D, which is Han Street project update. I'll give this to City Manager Borchert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually,
Point of order.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
If I could ask the mayor and the city council's indulgence, we normally have, because this is a special council meeting, we don't have a role for public forum, and I know that we have someone here this evening from the Elmhurst Symphony who wants to make an announcement, and I guess I would ask the city council would be willing to take and move that item up, so Mr. Jagert would not sit through our whole,
Absolutely.
if the council agrees to that.
I would have no problem with that whatsoever.
Make a motion to suspend.
I make a motion to suspend the rules to allow announcements to be heard at this point.
Okay. Motion from Alderman Rose, second from Alderman Hipskin.
that's
We have
a
to vote on
voice.
that by voice?
I think so.
We could all voice vote on this. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion is passed. I'd entertain gentleman from the Symphony to please come up and speak regarding his public input.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Ray Jagert. I'm the board president of the Elmhurst Symphony. I'm a resident of Buffalo Grove, and I have a lot of frequent flyer points between Buffalo Grove and Elmhurst over the last 5 years in this role. I would like to say just two things in this brief summary. Number one, thank you from the Elmhurst Symphony to the city of Elmhurst. And secondly, to give you a progress report on some of the things that have occurred as a result of the help and the encouragement with the city of Elmhurst. 2 years ago, there was a very, very generous grant given to the Elmhurst Symphony, and also for this year. What we primarily used in that particular funding was to augment and improve the even better quality of the musicianship of the Elmhurst Symphony. And the second important strategic thing we did was we created more awareness through many means, website, newspaper advertising, and a whole host of different means of getting the awareness. During the last 2 years, there's been almost an 80% increase in our attendance, and that has certainly helped our situation in the upcoming future. So we want to say from the Elmhurst Symphony Organization, thank you to the City of Elmhurst, to the mayor, to the city council. We could not have really been able to do it without your understanding and help. Also, I would like to invite everybody to come to the Elmhurst Symphony concert this Saturday at May 16th, just to create another awareness of the Elmhurst Symphony. Back on March 7th, the Elmhurst Symphony performed at Millennium Park at the Harris Theater with the Apollo Chorus, and I think there must have been about 1,300 or 1,400 people, mostly Chicagoans, that enjoyed the Elmhurst Symphony, and something that has been well known to many people here in the western suburbs. And finally, as far as the Chicago Tribune, in yesterday's arts and entertainment section, music editor John Von Ryan, who's very, very well regarded in terms of following the Chicago Symphony and others, he in essence indicated that the pick for this weekend is Elmhurst, the Elmhurst Symphony, and the Elmhurst Symphony having not only the symphony performing, a favorite pianist, a native son, Jeff Pianco, the Elmhurst Choral Union, and of course the Elmhurst College Choir. I think it truly can be said that the Elmhurst Symphony has now become, in essence, the premier symphonic organization in the western suburbs. And again, thank you, City of Elmhurst.
Thank you. the Elmhurst Symphony Orchestra is a fine organization. It's been around for many years, and we appreciate you coming out and letting us know the good things that you do, and we are definitely supportive of all your endeavors. So
Thank you very much.
Sure, sure. We're going to extend this open forum to anybody else that has anything public to comment on while we have the mic open. Is there anybody else that would like to speak real quick? City Attorney Storino.
Very briefly, I just wanted to say thank you to Mayor DeCiani and the council, and to City Manager Tom Borchard for the confidence shown in our firm this evening. We very much look forward to working with the city and appreciate this appointment this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. We look forward to the relationship as well. Anybody else? All right. Hearing no one else, we're going to go back to the agenda. Letter D, Han Street, update from City Manager Borchard.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Again, because of the special council meeting this evening taking the place of our committee meetings, there was an opportunity to take advantage of that time and provide a orientation on two more significant projects, economic development projects, that the past city council has been involved in, more or less as a committee of the whole, with city council action on redevelopment agreements and land acquisition and other aspects of the project going forward. So certainly do not expect any council action this evening. This is an orientation. In one regard, it's a update for the council that has carried forward, and then it's an orientation for the recently elected council. Although this information has been available and been reported on it throughout the community, but felt it again appropriate to provide a quick update. First of all, the Han Street project rolled out of the downtown plan, as did actually the Addison Avenue and First Street project rolled out of the comprehensive planning for the Central Business District and for the community in general. Han Street, the subject site, is across the street from where we're at here at Elmhurst City Hall at York and 3rd, north and west. Significant piece of property, almost, well, slightly over 3 acres in size. Like many redevelopment projects, particularly in central business districts involving tax increment financing and other municipal financing and involving several parcels of property, it is a journey. This journey started back in June '06 with the council approving the downtown plan, and has taken us through all of the years between then and now. Presently, the Zoning and Planning Commission is still completing its final analysis and its final recommendation relative to the plan development application request, which the city and the developer agreed to submit on the project. Mr. Strasburg will explain some of those details shortly. I think that's maybe my introduction, and I'll introduce David Strasburg to go through his presentation of more details relating specifically to the mixed-use project, which was first requested by the Elmhurst City Council through a request for proposal document, and then resulting in the Morningside development team being selected, and they are now processing that project through the Planning and Zoning Commission, the City Council, and then through the marketplace, which will really govern a lot of the timing as we go forward. This is certainly marketplace driven. Mr. David Strasburg from Morningside. Proceed.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for inviting us here tonight. Congratulations to the newly elected officials. We look forward to developing a great working relationship with you, as well as developing a great project here in the future. Morningside's pleased to have this opportunity to present our public-private partnership with the City of Elmhurst. The working name of our project is North District. Let me introduce another member of the Morningside team. I'm David Strasberg. I'm the managing member of Morningside Hahn LLC, which is the private sector partner in the public-private partnership we have with the City of Elmhurst. Melissa Pittman here is a vice president of Morningside Group and oversees this project as its project manager. Melissa grew up here in Elmhurst and is a graduate of York High School. Melissa shares my bullish enthusiasm for Elmhurst and is always proud to take people who don't know the town on a tour and explain all of its wonderful attributes. Representing the petitioners in our entitlement process is Scott Day of the Day and Roberts Law Firm. Scott had a previous commitment in another municipality and cannot be here tonight. So questions related to the development agreement or other legal issues can be responded to by Scott in writing later this week. Before we dive into the details of the project, let me briefly introduce Morningside Group for the benefits of the newly elected officials. Morningside Group specializes in the development of mixed-use and multifamily buildings in urban locations. So the North District project is exactly what we do. Our firm's renowned team of talented and experienced professionals adheres to really the most exacting standards in creating every building we develop. Our integrity and our commitment to excellence have led to Morningside's reputation as a leader in the design of highly acclaimed urban buildings. Morningside's organization is vertically integrated. That is, our firm completes virtually all of its activities in-house, thereby we're able to maintain very high standards throughout the development process. Our in-house capabilities include conceptual design, entitlements, marketing, and construction. Our in-house professional staff includes architects, engineers, construction managers, and marketers. I'm a licensed architect and have over 30 years' experience in building design, construction, and property development. Our motto is, as you can see on the screen there, different by design, which highlights not only our emphasis on quality architectural design, but also our track record of living up to our promises. As most of you are aware, Morningside has completed 2 projects in downtown Elmhurst previously. Museum Square contained 13 townhomes hiding a above-ground parking garage and 43 condominiums on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors. And the second project that we've completed is Crescent Court. Melissa was also the project manager for Crescent Court. This development included the conversion of the historic single-tenant Fifth Third building into a multi-tenant facility with ground floor retail. And then 2 brand-new buildings were constructed on the site containing 123 condominium units. Despite what you may have heard at the time from a few members of the public when this project was approved, I am not aware of any children dying as a result of this project. And I'm not aware of the project contributing to the decline of Elmhurst. In fact, the project was extremely successful and contributes today over $600,000 annually to the Elmhurst school districts, to the city, and to the county. In the interest of explaining the scope of our expertise, I've put together a few slides showing some recent projects we've completed. In addition to our expertise with mixed use and multifamily buildings, Morningside further specializes in public-private partnerships. Here's an example of an ongoing relationship we have with the Village of Oak Lawn. Oak Lawn is located in the southwest suburbs of Chicago. Mayor Kolb of Oak Lawn had a vision for a town center along 95th Street across from their community center, where they had the Village Hall, the library, and the senior center. Utilizing TIF financing and some federal mass transit funds, which aren't available anymore, unfortunately, Morningside acted as a program manager for the construction of a new metro station, which is there, to replace what was previously a box of bricks from the 1950s. We also program managed the construction of a 750-car parking deck adjacent to the train station, which replaced a surface parking lot. As a spec developer, we completed a 84-unit condominium building and a retail building which contained the Oak Lawn Children's Museum on the second floor of that building. The second phase of the mayor's vision includes a site that's 2 blocks west of the site where we completed this work, and we recently finished a 66-unit condominium building, which is over 70% sold, plus 20,000 square feet of retail space. Given the in-house technical expertise of Morningside, we're also able to deal with sites that are troubled and that many developers avoid. Our office in Ann Arbor, Michigan, entered into a public-private partnership with the Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority. Morningside acquired this multi-story manufacturing building from an out-of-state automotive supplier which moved its manufacturing facilities to Mexico. While the building was in a prime location adjacent to downtown Ann Arbor, a multitude of barriers existed to keep it from being developed. Portions of the existing building were structurally deficient. The soils were heavily contaminated with 100 years of manufacturing processes. The site was in a floodplain and a floodway. The buildings were in a designated historic district, and the zoning didn't allow residential use. But despite that, it was a perfect opportunity. So Morningside worked with the community and an alphabet soup of local, state, and federal agencies to redevelop the property into an award-winning mixed-use property. It's now considered the premier residential complex in that market, and it created a $40 million tax-paying machine for the city of Ann Arbor in place of a decrepit, empty factory. The last previous project I want to talk about is one we did in Royal Oak, Michigan. When National City Bank was looking to dispose of 3 blocks in a suburban Detroit downtown, Morningside stepped forward with a bold vision. Rather than just cosmetically rehab some nondescript 60s buildings that existed on the site, Morning saw the potential to bring national retailers and Chicago-style living to Metro Detroit. Morningside brought Barnes & Noble to anchor the first block on Royal Oaks Main Street. Later, we added the Blackfin and the Lodge National Restaurant chain to round out that block. On the second block, we brought retailer EB Games and quick casual concept Noodles & Company together with 70 loft-style condominiums. national restaurateur, Mongolian barbecue, trendy ice cream concept, Cold Stone Creamery, and an upscale hair salon rounded out the mix on the second block. We also took a 1920s era classic revival bank building, completely rehabbed it, and leased it to an upscale jewelry and watch store that relocated from a smaller store nearby. The final block, which I don't have shown here, we sold to Aveda Institute, and Aveda operates a spa and training institute with classrooms for cosmetology and estheology on that site. And what that did is that use attracts tremendous amount of daytime traffic, and the retailers who are overwhelmed in the weekends and the evenings but lack daytime traffic have really benefited from that new use. Okay, now for those who reading the newspapers and hearing the rumors, real estate's not dead. All real estate developers are not stopped, and we have the project here to demonstrate that. Within the past 90 days, Morningside acquired this 252-unit apartment complex in Highwood, Illinois, with an acquisition and development loan from Wells Fargo Bank. No government guarantees were required. Highwood, for those who aren't familiar, is on the Chicago's North Shore, sandwiched between Lake Forest and Highland Park. Across the street from the redeveloped former Army base, this property is another technically challenging site with environmental issues. Morningside has got rehabbing all the units over a 3-year period, and we're repositioning the property from its current status as a C minus D plus community to a B apartment community. Okay, enough about us. Let's talk about North District. Here's the plat map for the 2 blocks that the property occupies, and shows the parcels owned by the city in orange. Let me orient you. At the top of the site is North Avenue. The bottom is 3rd Street. On the east side is York, and on the west side is Addison. This slide is somewhat dated in that included in the orange area that's owned by the city and included in the project is this alley to the north and alley to the south. While they're owned by the city, they're not included in the project area. But the rest of what's colored in orange is. Let me review some of the neighboring properties here. There to the north is the CVS and Panera building. On the west side is the Normandy Townhomes. On the south side is the Harris Bank and the new senior building. On the corner of 3rd and York is the Shell Station, a convenience store. And then, not part of the area that the city owns, but included in the site area is the Marathon Service Station. Morningside has a contract to purchase the Marathon Station, contingent upon the seller receiving certain approvals and agreements from the Illinois EPA and an adjacent property owner. The seller is currently working to obtain those approvals and agreements. Just a brief review of what the site is, what's contained in the site. As Tom mentioned, the site's nearly 3 acres. We're planning 109 residential units, which consists of 102 condos and 7 townhomes. The 102 condos are located on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors of the low-rise building. We have 20,000 square feet of retail. and approximately 27,000 feet of public open space, which is scattered around the site. So how's the parking handled? There's a total of 321 parking spaces planned. And the parking is really divided into three components. The exclusively residential, which is 175, except for the townhome parking, which is just a few of them. All the residential parking is located in the underground garage. Then we have public parking, which is 100 spaces, and then exclusively retail parking, which is 46 spaces. And we'll go through the site plan. You'll see how all those work together. How did we approach this project, and what were kind of our priorities here? First and foremost, quality architecture was required. This is the essence of Morningside's core business objective, and Elmhurst would require no less. Next, parking. A comprehensive solution was required to the various parking demands. We noted that the potential for shared parking was there given the diversity of uses. The RFP from the city required us to provide 100 public spaces. Pedestrian amenities and open space. Our discussions with city staff and elected officials suggested that pedestrian amenities were important, including an urban green space. Next was the consistency with the downtown plan and codes. The city conducted a meeting with developers prior to the submission of these RFPs and suggested that variances from the city's zoning codes would not be welcome. Height would be limited to 4 stories, and the density could not exceed the specific ratios allowed under the code. It was clear that this limitation was absolute. Environmentally conscious. Environmentally conscious design is always a component of Morningside's developments. In addition to the intrinsic attributes of urban infill, transportation-oriented development, our plan must incorporate important environmental components. And lastly, we had some other considerations. We would need to deal with the petroleum contamination on the Marathon service station site. So let's take a look at the site plan that we developed and see how that works in response to the objectives. Just to orient you, York Street is to the east, Addison Street to the west. There's an alley, public alley to the north, and a public alley to the south. So this is a view from above. And one thing to keep in mind is where you see the dotted outline of the building. That's the area of the building that sits on stilts. So the area underneath it is clear for parking. So the retail space is oriented up front along York Street, and the entire rear area is open for parking. This is where the public parking and the exclusively retail parking is located, since the building is elevated on stilts to allow parking in that whole area. We've shown 8 separate retail spaces here, and that's really just a guesstimate. We have the ability to accommodate up to one 10,000 square foot retail user, or we can divide it to any number of smaller spaces. One thing that's missing from here, that's because this is an early version, is we agreed to put in a sidewalk here next to the Normandy townhomes to allow the residents to walk from the rear of their units and get access out to the sidewalk. So that's something that we added that's not shown here. Also want to point out some access points. Addison Street, you see here it's marked, this is where the ramp down to the underground parking. If you recall, I mentioned that the underground parking is exclusively for the residential uses. That's where the people in the condos on the second, third, and fourth floor would be parking their cars. There's also access points from the alley on the north side and on the south side of the property. One would drive in the alley and get access to the public and retail parking in the back of the retail spaces. Want to point out that along Addison Street here are the townhomes. These are 3-story townhomes. There's 7 of them. And their parking is a ground floor garage. We'll talk about it in more detail. We also have planned here a pedestrian arcade that links Addison to York and the public plaza that we have along York Street. This is a typical upper floor, second, third, and fourth floors of the condominium building. I orient you again, this is York here, and then the alleys to the north and alleys to the south. We have 34 residential units on each floor, and they range in size from 900 to 1,500 square feet. And units can be combined to create larger homes, as we did in several instances at the Crescent Court and Museum Square projects. All residential units are 1- and 2-bedroom with an average size of 1,070 square feet, and the largest 2-bedroom homes will have a separate den. Each floor is served by multiple elevators, and all the corridors are interior. Every residence has an outdoor living area, either a terrace or a balcony. On the second floor, you can see these areas that are shaded dark are terrace areas, and these are very popular at Crescent Court and Museum Square, where each residence has its private large outdoor space that was directly accessed from their home. And these proved very popular and actually sold at a large premium versus residences with just a balcony. Here's our basement plan. Basements are not very exciting, but this is where all the underground parking is for the condominium residences. We also have a workout room here. We have a bike room. We have storage lockers. Every residence comes with a storage locker. And we also have a vault for our stormwater detention. And remember, this area is accessed from a ramp that goes from Madison Street down to this basement. And this is all private parking. There's no public parking here. Public plaza. Here's a close-up of the public plaza. And all of the plaza is covered in Elmhurst standard decorative pavers or landscape green space. And we've created a large green area at the center of the public plaza that we've called an event lawn. It's really a big public gathering space. Contained within the event lawn is a fountain, to be determined design, with seating around the outside of the fountain. Surrounding portions of the event lawn is a wall with an integral bench for additional seating. Movable planters with small specimen trees and shrubs will be located strategically throughout the plaza. A pedestrian arcade, which you see here, connects Addison Street and York at the proximate location of the vacated Hahn Street. Along the pedestrian arcade and within the plaza are 3 elevated planters, 1, 2, 3, containing seasonal plantings. Along York Street to the north, in this area, where the building is set back from the property line, a precast planter with ornamental iron fencing is anticipated. This planter contains both ground cover, perennials, and canopy trees, but canopy trees that are designed to grow high so they don't block the visibility of the retail stores. South along York is conventional tree grates with canopy trees also. While all the hardscape and landscape is great, we must keep in mind that the visibility from the street is of paramount importance for the retailers. And we're concerned about some of the visibility of this retail here, where it's set back so far from the street. Also note that we anticipate these 2 end caps here to be restaurant uses, and we've shown some outdoor seating that would help lease that restaurant space and enhance the vitality of the public plaza. Here's the end of the pedestrian arcade, and this drawing has been turned from what you're used to seeing. So Addison Street is this way, and these are the 7 townhomes. You note the continuation of the standard Elmhurst pavers all the way through to the sidewalk and the elevated planters that we found in the public plaza. Also note that the townhomes are set back from the property line to create individual front yards. And those front yards are each enclosed with ornamental iron fences and a gate to create the sense of privacy. Each row home is 3 floors in height, and the ground floor contains a garage and mechanical storage rooms along with a den. On the top floor, the 3rd floor of each of these row homes are the bedrooms. Each of these extra wide townhomes has a 2-car garage with 2 cars, 2 parking spaces located behind the garage. Yes, sir.
Have you put the townhomes or any of the other units up for pre-sale yet?
This specific design?
Yes.
No, we have not used this specific design, but we've used variations on this design.
And what about the units for, the other condominium units? Have any of those, has there been a pre-sale yet at all?
No, we haven't. I understand what you're saying. No, we have not started the marketing, and we have not completed the entitlement process, as Mr. Borchard mentioned, where just recently went through the Plan Commission hearings, Zoning and Planning Commission, and would be expecting their report to be received soon, at which point it would come to you for the preliminary approval. Then we'd go through the final PUD approval.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Gutenkopf?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can follow up on Alderman Hipskin's line of questioning, you had anticipated opening the sales center by April 1st of this year. How far behind are you in this process? Your Gantt chart shows April 1st target date to open your sales center.
Right. The city has not completed its review of the project, so we're not in a position to move forward on anything. But
well, I understand that, sir. I'm just wondering how far behind you are now, based on what your preliminary estimates were about opening the sales center. How much is your chart shifted?
Melissa, when did the schedule show that the city would complete its review and have preliminary approval? So December 2008 is when the city, we had anticipated the city completing its approval of the development.
So are you off by 5 months at this point then? Is that your expectation? That everything's going to shift 5 months over?
You know, we originally expected to open the pre-construction portion in June of this year. Obviously, based on the approval schedule of the city, we're not going to do that. But, you know, it's no secret that the real estate marketplace is in a great distress, and all forms of residential property are suffering market hardship. And were we to open in June, we probably would be experiencing the same kind of market difficulties as the general market is. When our planned development application is processed and we're given our preliminary plan approval, you know, it's difficult to tell when pre-construction sales will commence. In the structuring of the development agreement that we signed with the city, we contemplated that the real estate market might continue to be soft. Last year, when we were negotiating the development agreement with the city, we never anticipated the staggering problems confronting the national economy today. But we did anticipate the risk of a real estate slowdown, and the development agreement provides for extensions of the timelines should significant real estate market conditions be confronted. And while we don't know for certain when pre-construction sales could commence until the preliminary plan is approved, there is certainly a serious risk that the period for pre-construction sales will need to be modified.
I have Alderman Hipskin and then followed by Alderman Brown. Alderman Hipskin?
So the city is late by a couple of months. Is that the city's fault? Is it, I mean, no one can anticipate what had happened last September and through this period right now. Are we in a holding pattern? How do you anticipate things? I mean, we want to have a pretty good understanding of how can we make the, I mean, we don't want, I know I myself, I want to make sure that we're doing this the right way in the right time. Things have changed a lot since a year from now. What's your views on that?
Well, there's nobody at fault for the process taking longer. The process takes what the process takes, and you've been around years here, and you know, people will have their say, and deliberations will take as long as deliberations take. So I don't think there's any fault on anybody's part. But you know, assuming that the plan is approved within the next couple months, we would then proceed for final plan approval. We have a period of time to do that. You know, we're going to watch the market conditions. We think Elmhurst is positioned better than most municipalities. There has been a constraint in new developments of this type. So we believe that when the market does start to improve, Elmhurst will be well positioned to take advantage of that.
Okay.
Alderman Brown?
You. To go along with that theme, I guess I would like to make a few statements, one of which, in regards to the, well, we won't go there yet. I think in the beginning of this presentation, you made a statement that you just wrapped up one of your projects. I don't know if it was in Oak Lawn or what suburb it was. And I thought you followed up with the statement that you said that it's 70% sold. Is that correct?
That was completed in 2007.
Okay. I thought your statement was we just recently finished a project, so 2007 to me is not recent.
In the timeline of real estate, a year and a half is recently.
Okay. Okay, well, that leads me away from the follow-up on that. What I would like to understand is, and I think it was part of our development agreement, is how much money, and you might not know this now, but a request for follow-up information, is how much money has been invested by the Morningside Group to this point for this project. As we well know, the City of Elmhurst, we have pretty much purchased all the land for the development, and we're carrying those land costs. I thought in the development agreement it said that we would periodically be able to see the financials that Morningside Group is carrying on this property. So I'd like to request what is the current financials, and could we see that on a periodic basis?
City Manager Borchert?
Well, in part, that's why we're doing this orientation, to bring everybody back up to speed. And again, going forward, this city council is going to need to approve whatever the Zoning and Planning Commission's recommendations are relative to the project. And there are time limits and provisions in the development agreement. Certainly be looking with the new law firm and to work out the requirements of that agreement as it relates to the timelines which change, as Alderman Gutenkopf has identified. There was an understanding that there was to be some movement on the timeline when the redevelopment agreement was reached. So there are provisions, as Alderman Bram has suggested. In fact, for other folks, the City Council has been provided a notebook with a lot more backup material and information, a copy of the redevelopment agreement parameters, provisions which I think Alderman Bram is referring to, for the city to set up accounts where when construction begins, there are accounting of expenditures to allow for an accounting by an independent party as to the public side expenses, the private side expenses, eventually then the private side profits, and depending on profits and the amount of those profits, and a profit sharing clause is actually in the city's public-private development agreement as requested. So to make sure that those agreements and provisions can be monitored, there is a way for the city to have access to the developer's expenditures. We will get an update and work with Mr. Strasburg to provide that. I think Mr. Strasburg still had a little bit more of a program to go through, and we'll certainly, I think we want to get into the Q&A part and then allow some time for the Addison Street project update.
Okay, I'll go fast. Okay, here's the money shot. This is the elevation of the building facing York Street. And a major challenge of the site was the nearly 350 feet of building frontage. To avoid the monotony of that a single building with a single architectural design would offer, we divided the facade into three distinct architectural styles. From left to right, Chicago Mercantile, Tuscan, and French Renaissance. And not only are there multiple architectural styles, but each style uses a unique palette of materials, colors, and roof lines. And while over 93% of the facade is brick or stone masonry, accent materials are used throughout, including standing seam mansard, metal mansard roofs, cement, board box bays, simulated Spanish tile shed roofs, wood trellises, decorative metal cornices, synthetic stucco walls, and fabric awnings and banners. And the use of a diverse palette of materials, colors, and textures really differentiates each architectural style and enhances the overall elevation. You know, our goal in creating this elevation was to create the spider web requested by Alderman Leader that would lure motorists from North Avenue into the downtown. And the octagonal structure at the northeast corner is incorporated as an iconic element designed to draw attention to the development. And I also want to point out the archway, that this is the pedestrian arcade from York out to Addison. These are the row homes along Addison, and the Tuscan architectural style is repeated here, but with a different palette of colors. And 2 brick colors are used with a green simulated Spanish tile roof and stone roof parapets. You can see the individual front yards that we talked about earlier, and the fences and gates enclosing those front yards. Just quickly go through these elevations. This is the north alley where you notice how the embellished facade is wrapped around the corner. Because the CVS building is set back, we wanted to keep the embellished facade all the way up to the setback with the CVS. We did the same thing on the other side with the Shell station. We kept the embellished facade up to the setback of the adjacent building. These, I'm going to run through a quick animation. These are some of the shots. This is a shot looking down from North Avenue. Here's the spider web that we hope to create with the octagonal building and the iconic elements that would draw people to the project. This is a view looking in the other direction, looking from the south, looking towards North Avenue. It's a view of the public open space with the event lawn, the fountain, the benches, the seating area for the restaurants, and you can see the pedestrian arcade and the row homes along Addison. Okay, double click. Okay, so this is our animation, 3D animation, that will give you a good sense of the project, and the adjacent structures are shown. So it'll help you visualize how those adjacent structures interrelate with the building. I don't know if you'd like to see that again, or one time through was enough?
Very nice.
Okay. All right, that concludes our presentation, and
Thank you, Mr.
It's up to
Strasburg. One
them
other
to
question from Alderman Pezza.
Thank you. I just had one quick question, Mr. Strasburg, in reference to the whole timeline issue. You had mentioned, of course, pending city approval and the whole process. I do recall at the zoning hearing, you had asked for a 6-month extension. So would that be applied if this gets approved? Would you, if the 6-month extension were approved, which I don't know if it were, would you apply that 6 months to also wait until you began marketing after approval, or how would you apply that 6-month extension you had requested?
That 6-month extension was not granted by the Plan Commission, so we haven't contemplated that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? It's a beautiful plan, and in light of our budget, we are looking for revenue. So, and we're also looking for development like this nature. So, we're excited. I think we have a new council that definitely is a pro-economic development, smart development, and this is obviously a Class A development that you're looking to put forward. So, we're looking forward to working with you. We appreciate you staying on board with this as well, given the economy, and we appreciate your time and actually explaining all this, especially to the new members. So.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Alderman Gutenkopf?
Yeah, I have one quick question. You mentioned that you've, this relates to the townhomes of Normandy, the existing townhome development that is adjacent to your project, and you mentioned that you're planning a pedestrian access from their parking lot to the front of their building. What other kinds of discussions have you had with the existing residents? I know that they were very concerned about access to their parking lot from both sides, and should Hahn Street become the ramp to the underground parking garage, they're effectively cut off from accessing their parking lot on that side. Have you been in active discussions with those residents about resolving that issue?
Yes, we've had multiple meetings with the Normandy residents, and during the Zoning and Planning Commission deliberations, we believe that we have satisfied the requests that they made upon us for the access point.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Strasburg, thank you very much for your time. We definitely appreciate the presentation. Next on the agenda is the DevCom development project.
And again, while we're getting that set up, we did provide for the council some of the fresher material on the Hahn Street project, and a lot of details go beyond what was summarized for the council, including some of the financial information, the land acquisition costs, financial performers, the private side, public side pro forma that speaks to what what Mayor DeCiani referred to from an economic development perspective. This is about providing development that's within a comprehensive plan for the downtown and provides a positive economic return in time for the community. Addison Avenue and First Street subject sites. Again, the council has got a separate book on the DevCom realty investment proposal, where the city has taken some action on and is in the process of working with DevCom on the development of the Phase 1 site, which is shown at the corner of Larch and First Street. That site is a city facility, a city parking structure. Phases 2 is presently owned by the developer through a loan with the city. The city is enjoying an interest return on that loan at a higher rate than what the city would otherwise get with those dollars in its normal conservative investments. And in return for that, should the development not proceed, the city gets the land, which the city wanted to begin with. So it's a good public-private partnership agreement, allowing the developer to have the access to cash to buy the Phase 2 site, which is a proposed site of a mixed-use retail facility and a municipal parking structure. The developer is presently working on relocating the tenants in that existing Phase 2 site to other sites, ideally seeking to build a medical office building on the Phase 3 site, which is shown here. Phase 4 is a fourth phase of proposed work on the property presently occupied by the Savings and Loan, which DevCom has a contract for purchase. Again, this journey started some time ago. We got the documentation of that. We'll go through these things quickly. There has been some initial steps made by the city in acquiring the Addison Street site through the developer and the Hurley site, which is the 175 West First Street site, through the developer. And the developer is working on the subsequent phases of work, specifically in detail, beginning to work on the design of the parking structure. We've met twice in a very preliminary fashion with the Larch Avenue residents. We've had a preliminary meeting with the Chamber and the City Center from a stakeholder perspective. We have yet to meet with them relative to review of plans. The next step would be for the council committee and then council to work on the contract for design and construction management of the parking structure, which is contemplated and agreed to in the original development agreement. I think we're ready for David Hollingsworth from the DevCom team to present for the council his team, his individuals, and his perspective of where he's at with the project.
It's a big file. I'm sorry. You can go page down, page up. There we go. Page down is okay. So you just page down, page up.
I want to thank the City Council of Elmhurst for having us in this evening to review our plan, actually the mutual plan we have with Mr. Tom Borchert and actually Mr. Terry Slight, that we hope to implement in the city. I'd like to say hello to familiar faces that we've seen before, and also to some new faces on the council. Congratulations and welcome. Also, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Strasburg on what appears to be an outstanding project. It's wonderful. Good luck with it. My name is David Hollingsworth. I have a investment real estate brokerage company. We have done primarily investment sales and leasing, leasing as it supports the investment and redevelopment projects in several suburban downtowns, primarily Naperville, which is where I'm from. We have come together as a team to do a project in Elmhurst because we each bring a great deal of expertise in our own particular way. So part of the team is Dan Hiffman of NAI Hiffman and Brad Daniger of Arco Murray National Construction Company. So I'd like to invite them up to introduce themselves. Dan, will you come up?
Good evening. Dan Hiffman. I'm a retail sales and leasing specialist. I'm a 7-year resident of Elmhurst, and David and I, it's the brainchild of David and I, hopefully coming to fruition here.
Good evening. My name is Brad Daniger. I'm with Arco Murray National Construction Company. Arco Murray is a design, build, general contractor focusing on turnkey solutions. We have annual revenues of $300 to $400 million by having relatively few customers and serving them on a national basis. We have 7 offices throughout the country, one of which is in Oak Brook, in which I'm a partner and run the Chicago office for us. Thank you.
What we want to do tonight basically is just provide an overview of where we've been for the benefit, for review for those that have heard us before, and also for a fresh introduction to those that have not. So we're going to start at the beginning and pretty much tell you how we came and why we came to Elmhurst in the first place. We started, I think, around a little over 2 years ago. We were looking around for a viable project. Came to Elmhurst, saw a a bustling downtown with a tremendous amount of energy, a great business space, a lot of new development, both commercial and residential, a beautiful theater, which is a rarity, as you all know, these days, particularly the York. I mean, that's just an outstanding little theater. A commuter train station right in the heart of downtown. Can't beat that. Now, this is really critical, too. An extremely accessible downtown. I mean, you get to Elmhurst from anywhere. It's amazing. The roadways are phenomenal, of course, the train. So it's very accessible for a lot of reasons, which is exciting to us. But most importantly, this is what makes things happen for developers and for communities. A forward-thinking city government that's willing to work with developers in a prudent manner toward reasonable and achievable development. And that's, I'd like to commend Elmhurst on that. It's been a pleasure so far, and I look forward to it in the future. Okay, how did we come to decide on Elmhurst, and what do we want to do? We started to think about what we could do to help make a very good town an exceptional town. So we looked around, and it was kind of easy for us to see that for as much energy and excitement that we found on York Road, we found an equal amount of sleepiness, if you will, on Addison. And so we thought, well, Addison is a great place for us to look at doing something to really contribute to this downtown. So we got together with an architect that we know that could help us with some ideas to put it on paper. So what we will do, let's see, go down to the second slide here, page down. Okay, we look at the downtown, and from our perspective, what makes a downtown truly viable? And that it's not just any one thing. John? Where's John? Yes. Okay, got a mouse thing going here.
This is the mouse.
Oh, that's the mouse. Wrong
This
one.
is so you can.
Okay.
That was David's.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. What makes a downtown viable in a very large sense? It's really a combination of a lot of things in a confluence of uses that come together to provide a synergy that creates an environment to live, work, and play, as you can see. And I guess you'd call it a mixed-use development. That's exactly what it is. Transportation-oriented development, you call it anything you want. But the point is, we're looking at creating an environment along the Addison corridor, both at First Street and along Second a little bit, but primarily along Addison and along Schiller Court, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But the uses that we envision, I mean, there are so many of them, but we're looking at bringing in retail uses and restaurant uses, office uses, general, professional, medical, more residential uses from apartments to condos, townhomes, some entertainment venues that we think we can draw from the city of Chicago, both theater and music. We've had conversations with the people in the hotel industry. We think that given our project and what Elmhurst is all about, we have a really good chance of getting a very, very nice boutique, like it shows, boutique hotel, bed and breakfast kind of a thing. Maybe, given what we know about about educational institutions that may be interested, there may be an opportunity to get additional educational institutions in town and maybe accentuate what Elmhurst College already has to offer. Public institutions that, hey, you're already here. You've got the City Hall right downtown. It's outstanding. And then, grocery venues. So, and this is just the short list. There are so many uses that we can go after. But this is basically, in a broad sense, the concept we want to achieve for the Addison Street corridor in Schiller. And I'll just say, as an aside here, what we really want to do along Addison is create a national, regional retail corridor. And I can tell you today isn't necessarily the best time to start that. But, and along Schiller Court, we want to do something that I believe is truly unique and I think is very Elmhurst. We think is very Elmhurst. and that is create almost of a European market street, which could be a lot of bistros, some really wonderful local color, local retailers, and just use that as a linkage between the Addison Street, let's call it retail base, and what seems to be occurring naturally on York Street in terms of entertainment. And so that kind of rounds out their concept in general. And let's get to the first phase. Well, let me say, the whole concept that we're talking about requires more than the promise of parking. If we're going to be getting a critical mass of retail, for example, they don't come unless you have the parking. So it all starts with parking, and that's where we started with Mr. Borchert and Mr. Van Slyke. This is the one of the slides we brought to the City Council. I think it was back in October, early October, I believe, maybe September. I'm sorry. But this shows an aerial of the downtown and the location of the central parking deck that we envision for downtown Elmhurst, which would front on Addison, but also front on Schiller Court. And you can see a little bit of the retail that we plan on building. This is a closer up slide so that you can see it. We plan on including retail in this parking structure, which will be ultimately owned by the development group, and the parking itself will be sold to the city, but it will front on Addison, but also in Schiller. These are just some pictures that we put in here because they represent the quality of the architecture that we're considering, and ultimately it's really up to the city to decide which direction you want to go with this. We just throw this up there for consideration tonight. This is a development matrix that we did showing possible first phases of the development and the kind of revenue that they could produce in the city. It's hard to see, I know. I'll just read what they are here.
It is in their book, David, so if you want to go, the council can look at that as they've got their notebook.
Okay, is that right? That's fine. But we just want to show you that we're trying to, we're doing our best to kind of pay our own way with this development, and I think this matrix goes a long way to showing you that. Now, this is the one of the floor plates for the Thorn property, or the 135-149 parking deck. And I actually would like to invite Brad Daniger up here to talk a little about this. This is his expertise.
All right. Just hitting a few of the highlights associated with this Addison Street parking deck. Here's Addison along the top of the page with an ingress and egress at the northwest corner of the structure. The cars would then come in, work their way up a ramp in which there is parking along the ramp, and then in a moment here we'll show some of the upper levels. In total, the garage houses roughly 500 parking stalls and has a height just under the 45-foot limit. This site really works excellent as the site is 180 feet deep, which is the ideal depth for 3 banks of parking. It works very, very effectively. This is a picture of one of the elevated floor plates. So there's parking along the ramps up, and then this becomes all level parking. We're looking at an elevator here at the southwest corner of the structure along Addison, for which would be the primary use for the pedestrians. Here's a rough elevation at this time. Obviously, rather straightforward, as Dave mentioned, and you'll see in our First Street garage. We will work very closely with the City of Elmhurst as far as incorporating their vision for the structure. I think the key things to take out of this are, based on the level parking plates at 15, 25, 35, and 45 feet above finished floor, it's a design in which can be relatively easily masked away from the look of a parking garage and more to a city structure.
Conceptually, at this time, we're looking for about 16,000 square feet of retail. As David had mentioned earlier, along Addison Street, the depths there will be about 75 to 80 feet of depth, which is really what you need to bring or to allow a national retailer to even consider space there. Obviously, it is irregular, or maybe it's better off calling it unique shape, in that we will be utilizing and beautifying the Schiller Court headway. Also, I think what's important here is that we are making the main entrance or exit at the southwest corner of the structure, which for those that would be coming either to the theater or to the core downtown on York will have to walk past our boutique retail, and we really wanted it to have some synergy with what Willis Johnson is doing at 105 Schiller Court, which was the former Q & Cushion, current Citibank facility. NEI Hiffman will be handling the leasing. There are two people at our company that specialize in downtown suburban leasing, and the most important part about Elmhurst, which is key to the two women who will be working on it, is that they are extremely familiar with the regional mall halo, where when you're going after the national retailers, that they often have a radius restriction from regional malls, and typically that's about 5 miles. You deal with that here in Elmhurst, you deal with it in Hinsdale, you deal with it out to Glen Ellen to a certain degree. They work in those marketplaces and are familiar with those marketplaces. I guess some quick things too is, of the 16,000 square feet, I think we're probably looking for about 4,000 square feet of it to be a restaurant use. So any additional food and beverage tax would be great. And as always with sales tax dollars, I believe per the development agreement, I believe 75% of the square footage must be sales tax producing entities. I think that's about it for the retail.
We throw this slide in only because this is the south elevation of Willis Johnson's 109 North Park Road building, and as you see at the top here, reaching out to stakeholders in the community produces excellent results. We sat down with Willis about a year ago and shared with him visions that we had for downtown, particularly along Schiller Court. And he got very, very excited about that. And based upon a vision that we share, Willis decided to orient the south portion of a very long building in a manner that appears to be a number of boutique-y retail shops. So I think I'm very happy that Willis decided to do that, and I think this project is going to be a very good project for Elmhurst. Now, this takes us over to what we're planning over at 175 West 1st Street, and I'll invite Mr. Daniger back up here to address what we're doing over there.
This is the First Street garage, which I believe the primary focus of the garage is for commuter traffic to provide easy access to the train station. We've worked in great detail with Mr. Borchert and Mr. Said, as well as the residents along Larch, to come up with a design that meets the intentions of the city, as well as hopefully works for the residents along Larch. In considering the design options, orientation of the garage was considered, and we ended up on this north-south orientation for a couple reasons. One, we felt like it maximized the green space visible along Larch Avenue. As you can see, the east elevation of the garage is offset further from Larch than the front elevation of many of the residents. It provides easy in and out for the commuters, where we shouldn't have an issue with stacking traffic. And I think the layout works fairly well. One of the concerns from the residents early in the process was additional through traffic. Hopefully that concern has been eliminated through the addition of the cul-de-sac and eliminating the through traffic along Larch. This is a current elevation associated with the front along First Street. This would be the south elevation. We've gotten to this point through several meetings with both the city as well as the residents, taking input from the residents and trying to come up with a concept that fits in with the balance of the neighborhood. As you can see, it's 45 feet high, with the exception of the elevator tower and some of the parapet walls, but the parking, the maximum height of the parking is 45 feet. This is one of the options that we're currently considering along the east elevation, similar to the Hahn Street project, trying to incorporate the look of multiple architectural styles into the elevation to provide some relief and soften the height and the size of the structure. This is a second concept along the east elevation. As I said, we're currently working with the city as well as the residents to get additional feedback and find something that works well for everybody involved. This is the north elevation, most closely tied to the Larch residence. It's a little difficult to tell, but the lighter shaded windows in the center of the elevation are actually solid panel. So therefore, there's very few openings that face to the north to minimize noise and just create separation between the uses. Lastly, this is an elevation being considered along the west side adjacent to the electrical substation. So we tried to make the concentration of the design along First, along Larch, as well as along the north elevation of the site.
Okay, that concludes our presentation, but before we end it here, I neglected to say hello to the Larch residents that showed up tonight. Thank you very much for showing up and being with us tonight. That concludes our presentation. As you can see, we're just going to get started in our process, but we want to ask the council if you have any questions for us. We're happy to answer as best we can.
Thanks, Mr. Hollingsworth. Anybody have any questions? Alderman Brown?
Thank you. Actually, it's not directed towards the current proposal. It's actually directed, if I may, Mr. Mayor, to the city manager from an overall process perspective and an explanation of the development agreement we have in place. One of which, for those of you new council members, some of this information that was presented tonight was brand new, which is the parking deck as well as the cul-de-sac on First Street. I do want to make sure that everybody understands that that was in preliminary discussions, but this is the first time that we've seen an actual drawing. The process question is, I was just wondering on why we went to specific residents in regards to preliminary drawings, et cetera, before the council even saw any preliminary drawings and concepts of closing off the cul-de-sac, et cetera. And the reason why I ask this is if the overall council decides that there's a need to go in a different direction, and we already have various residents on board, that would possibly cause some additional angst that probably should not have happened.
Well, to respond, certainly all of the meetings have been prefaced with an objective of the city staff and the city's private side partners attempting to find concepts that would be viable for that neighborhood, viable for the city initiatives, and then certainly going to be subject to the city council's review and approval. In that regard, I certainly believe that nothing has been presented that can't be changed. There has always been a clear direction that I understood from the city council, past at least, that it would do public projects in such a fashion to meet the city's overall initiative of economic development and central business district revitalization, central business district development, but be sensitive to the neighborhood, sensitive to its neighbors. And in that regard, we've had a couple of meetings with the neighbors to get their input, so we could be prepared to move forward with with those details with the next city council. This city council is ultimately going to have to approve the detailed plan and the timetable to go forward. If you recall, one of the objectives is to create the additional parking in as reasonable a timetable as possible. There is a possibility to begin the construction of this parking structure later this construction season, but a lot has to be done to keep that on schedule. So in that regard, not wishing to be completely in a series fashion of nothing happens until A, B, C, D, we're doing some things concurrently, that being the preliminary engineering, preliminary review, and now in a position to present to the Public Works and Buildings Committee the actual design contract and build contract for this structure. Concurrently, we're seeking stimulus dollars and infrastructure grant dollars from IDOT and from PACE and other state agencies, which we may or may not be successful on. But there are a lot of things, as I think Alderman Bram is alluding to, going on at the same time. But we certainly understand that this city council needs to be the ultimate reviewer and ultimate approver of any project going forward. Thank you. Just to follow up,
The reason why I bring this up is I want to make sure that it is evident to the residents who have seen this preliminary information that it is just that it is preliminary, that we're actually, as a council, as an elected body, seeing it after some of the residents have already seen it. So I just want to make sure that that is clear. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman. Alderman Nabo.
On that point, in a prior life, I spent a couple years serving on a zoning board. And from that experience, I think it's certainly advisable that petitioners, whether they're seeking to build a parking deck or just to put an addition on their house, touch base with those parties that are most impacted by that development, i.e. being the residents. So I think they should be commended for reaching out preliminarily to share their concept prior to submitting it formally to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Nabo. Good point. Anyone else? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have a couple of questions. The first is that I noticed that the proposed retail concepts and the east and west elevations of the Larch Street parking deck aren't in our binder, and I wonder if we could get copies of those. I'd appreciate that.
I'm sorry, Alderman, copies of?
The retail concept for Addison Street and the east and west elevations of the Larch Street parking garage.
Certainly.
I sure would like to have those, so I appreciate that.
Believe me, I, with some trepidation, have gone as far as we've gone. It's our rule to not go too far out in any fashion without making sure we had committee review or council review. I know the city council past has had a general understanding of the DevCom project and of the desire to build a structure and to make Larch Avenue South End nice divider between the commercial and the industrial, but the commercial and the residential. But certainly this is, as Alderman Bram stated, the first time some of this information has been relayed to the City Council.
And I do appreciate that. It's very helpful to be able to kind of mull over what's being proposed, and it's so difficult sometimes to see what's up on the screen. I do have a question about the Addison Street parking deck. You mentioned that the space to put the retail and the parking deck is 180 feet deep, and I wonder how that is measured. That's the existing space, or does that presume some vacation by the city?
Well, the proposed retail space is 75 to 80 feet deep.
Well, you mentioned the entire space was very desirable because it's 180 feet deep, and I wondered how that was measured.
Depending on how the final design works out with the city, the outside face to outside face dimension could be, 183 feet roughly. The face of the retail could be maintained within the property line. However, there may be some structural columns that fall into the Addison right-of-way, by potentially a couple feet, depending on the final design that we come up with the city.
So in other words, it does presume some sort of vacation by the city, whether it's air rights vacation or something.
It would possibly, as Mr. Daniger stated, require some easement or vacation or permitting of the structural supports for what would be a public building, the public parking structure, to be west of the east right-of-way line of Addison Street. But that has been contemplated, and we need to be accurate about it. And as the details are more understood, certainly presented to all, and we do anticipate some need to get into that Addison Street right-of-way, which, by the way, I believe is 100-foot right-of-way, or is it 80? I thought it was 80. 80 foot. The Addison right-of-way is 80 feet as compared to the York Street right-of-way, which is 66, which for the newly elected council is a reason why the comprehensive plan even identifies that the Addison Avenue right-of-way may have some opportunity for better use than what it currently is being used for, in the thought to potentially maximize the pedestrian and the public use of the right-of-way, but also maximize the opportunity of the private side.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you. I have another question. As I was flipping through the materials we were given, I noticed that in our binder in Section 2, there's the aerial plan that you showed with the potential phasing of your project. And following that in Section 3 is a narrative with a proposed phasing detail outlined, and they don't line up the same. And I wonder if that's because some of this is preliminary. Which one of these potential phasings is the one that you think is most current now?
Well, we have a work in progress, if I could say that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
We have a work in progress here. We came in with initial ideas and visions, which we put on paper, and those ideas have evolved, and they've gotten a lot more specific over time. So,
can I get back to the city presentation?
The city presentation you saw whenever. Yeah. The city,
I think that's what Alderman Gutenkopf's talking about
was the most recent.
I'm sorry, I thought it was in your presentation.
Go down several.
There we go.
There you go. Yeah.
Why don't you explain that, Mr. Hollingsworth? Or
yeah, this is the most.
Can you go to the mic, please?
Pardon me?
Stay by the mic, please.
This is the most recent plan that we're working on right now, and as I think you heard earlier, we do have the Charter 1 site under control, and we're studying the feasibility of that project for our purposes. So To the extent that we conclude that the site will work for what we want it to do for us and for the city of Elmhurst, we will pursue it and close on it, which will make that phase 3 and 4 component viable exactly as you see it. Now, what we are doing here, just so that you understand, we're trying to create a mixed-use project that is phased in a way that will allow us to proceed with a particular phase based on market conditions. So, what we're looking at on the Charter 1 site, much of that could get started probably right away if the numbers pencil out for us. Other components will include residential. We wouldn't be willing to pursue that at this time. We understand that time is money, and we want to get our project on wheels and get some phases done to start paying the city back the revenue that they're going to be using to build parking decks. So it will continue to evolve.
City Manager Borchert?
Just to complement the question and the answer, Phase 2 is the site presently now purchased and owned by DevCom, but with a loan from the city. The building on Phase 2 is a medical office building, and then there's the Athar restaurant to the north of that. The medical office building, currently now being managed by DevCom, has got leases for those tenants that go out 2-3 years, maybe a little bit more. The proposed Phase 3 on the Charter 1 site is been identified as a potential new medical office building.
Yes, potentially.
Potentially. The desire would be to allow for a new medical office building on the parking lot side of the Charter 1 site, could be built along the same timeline as the city's construction of the Phase 1 parking deck, that would allow for the tenants of the existing Addison Thorn site medical building to relocate those that would wish into the new medical office building, allow other professional service providers to serve the Elmhurst community at that medical office building site. And the Phase 1 parking structure, which is initially going to be used for commuters, would eventually then be also allowed for customers that would be going to the medical office building. The downtown zoning requires the city to provide parking for downtown use. So the city would be positioning itself, I think, perfectly for long-term success with the private side partner, with the parking structure built on Phase 1, as the private side on their dime builds a medical office building in the Phase 3 site, as the Phase 2 location vacates for the ultimate additional parking structure and retail project to complement the Willis Johnson project on York Street, and thus Addison Avenue continues to revitalized.
Yeah, that great overview, Tom. Thank you very much. Getting back to the notion of this phasing thing, it's a musical chairs thing, actually. Our plan coming in here was figuring out a way to acquire property and be able to reuse it relatively quickly, which involved on the Thorn site, which is 135 North Addison, and the Athar site, by the way, that we find new homes for those tenants within another building downtown, so that we could vacate that, raise the building, and start the construction of the primary parking facility in downtown Elmhurst. Now, one of the big reasons that we are including retail in that is because we are going to need a place to relocate some of the other desirable tenants along Addison, so that we can continue to assemble properties and gentrify the street. So there are lots of moving pieces here, but it's really all part of a plan, and the plan is subject to change based upon how successful we are in pursuing the properties we're going after. So far, we've done a pretty good job, I think.
Alderman Pezza.
Thank you. Looking at Phase 3, first I would like to say thank you for the meetings with the residents. I had the pleasure of attending the meeting, and I think it was very informative. However, if you look at Phase 3 on what is proposed here, it's quite a bit different than what the residents were told just a couple of weeks ago at our meeting. I believe originally what they saw did show a medical building, and then when you came back, the medical building was gone, and they questioned that, and at that time, just a couple of weeks ago, I believe you said it was not in the plan. Now it's back in the plan in this short time span, and I'm also wondering where the cul-de-sac was proposed to the residents with that park area that the city owns and said they'd maintain. Is this now Phase 3 portion going to encumber or use or need any of that land the city owns that was supposed to be park behind the cul-de-sac area?
No, the plan that we showed you in our presentation that's the latest thing we have in terms of what we perceive to be relatively, accurate and acceptable to all parties pending council approval. And that was the one showing the large right-of-way with the cul-de-sac and the green space. That's the direction we've gone in. When we first met with the large residents with the medical office building and the large right-of-way, no one liked it, so we changed it. And we took it off of there. Now, whether or not we put a medical office building on Phase 3 or not, we're going to try to find a place to put a medical office building down there because we need to vacate the Thorn property. So it's our thinking that that is a very logical place to put it for a lot of reasons. So we're probably going to pursue it, but that is a parcel that is it's zoned for that particular use, and it will encumber in no way the large right-of-way. Okay. However, it's not carved in stone. We can't say today that that's exactly what we're going to do. We're looking at it. That's the way this whole plan is going to happen. It's going to evolve. And that's why the notion of the partnership with the city is so critical. We're trying to do our best as developers to do right by the city and the residents. And we bounce everything off of Mr. Borchert, and so far he has been a great resource for us. And I think we've got a great relationship.
To be clear, Mr. Hollingsworth, your present plans, maybe Phase 3, as it's shown now in yellow, is a little bit deeper going to the east than what it looked like before. The medical office building was going to be pushed to the west end of that parking lot site, but you haven't made any specific plans at all. It's a schematic. The medical office building, if it happens, is going to be on the site towards the west end, but not in the Larch Avenue right-of-way.
No, absolutely not.
Not in the Larch Avenue right-of-way.
Hear that, folks? It will not be in the right-of-way. Say never. Okay, this is on the record. Never. Okay. Any more questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hollingsworth. Anybody else?
Just a quick.
Alderman Pezza?
Just one more quick. I just want to say thank you to everyone for these updates. I think they were very informative and very necessary. Until just a couple of weeks ago, I myself was only able to view these projects as a resident and taxpayer. Now I'm looking forward to working with the new council, which half of us, just about half of us are new, the new city attorneys, the staff, and of course the large residents, to make this the absolute best project it can be, and I'm sure that can and will happen. However, in order to do this, I think it's imperative, especially as a new alderman, I don't mind reading a stack this tall if I have to. I was expecting to have received any and all documents pertaining to especially this project in the last packet, so since that was not available, I'm hoping if we can get it, or if I can get it, or the new councilman can receive any and all information this Thursday, or I'd be happy to come myself, pick it up. I just think in order for me myself to participate in further discussion or make an informed decision or vote, I need to do my due diligence and read and know as much as possible about these projects. I think it's wonderful that, the new city attorney will be a new set of eyes on this also, and I appreciate the time, everyone has spent on this, but I would like more time myself as a newly elected official to really be able to absorb this, get some answers, ask questions, so that we can make the absolute best possible decision when the time comes. So if we can get that information, like I said, I'm willing to read as much as there is, because I feel I need to do that, so.
Thanks, Alderman
Thanks.
Pezza. And I think with our new city attorney on hand, too, I think that will take a lot of doubt, if there is any, that the agreements that are in place are sound, that they're a win-win for the city and for the private-public interests, and also a win-win for the citizens of Elmhurst. Destination retailers are a great thing. It's one of the issues I ran on, sales tax generating businesses. So I like what I hear so far. And we're confident with our new legal staff that we'll have an extra set of eyes and try and accommodate Ms. Pezza here with her needs as well, too. So, Mr. Hipskin?
Alderman Pezza brings up a great point here. As 5 new council members, there are 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new council members. The with everyone, and this is directed to City Manager Borchert, it may be very helpful for us in very quick time to put together this project, the 2 projects we've seen tonight, and maybe other very relevant happenings that the new council people only have seen as citizens and not as aldermen, to put that together, because it could be very helpful, and their input can, benefit us too, and, have a whole, kind of maybe a city council meeting of the whole or something.
Sounds good, Alderman Hipskin. Alderman Brown.
Yeah, just to clarify what I was mentioning earlier, I was not trying to state that we should preclude the residents' input at all. What I was trying to state was I want to make sure there's no misconceptions, especially if the city council did not preview the material. You have people walking up to the street and telling you things that you are not aware of, that has been discussed maybe behind closed doors, but is only in preliminary fashion. So my request was, if stuff like this happens, especially when we have a large project like this on hand, that it should be communicated to the city council as well, so the city council knows just as much as the residents that are affected by any project within Elmhurst.
Thank you, Alderman. I believe all of us are entitled to go to these meetings as well, so I know Alderman Pezza was at that meeting, so that's a good thing, so we're all able to attend those, to be brought up to snuff. So Alderman Wagner with a hand. Alderman Wagner?
Thank you, Mayor. I think both of these economic development plans are really, really good, and it seems like both companies are very flexible to work with the council, so I appreciate that. That's going to be great, and hopefully everybody will come out on top. Mr. Borchert, I have a question for you. Is it the intention of the city to manage both of these projects at the same time?
If the timetable, yes.
Okay. Has any thought been given to any kind of traffic flows that may or may not be interrupted from the downtown flow area?
Yes.
Okay.
It's an alderman that ran a common sense government over there, right, Alderman Wagner? Thank you, Alderman Wagner. Anybody else? Alderman Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is directed to Mr. Borchert. I want to say for both the Hurley property and also the Addison Street parking garage, the Athar and the adjoining building, I think the council voted on commitment and term sheet, something of that nature, pending a development agreement. And it looks to me like phase 1, if you will, the commuter parking garage is going to be going first. When do we anticipate we will have a development agreement to review where all the details are, the meat, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, that kind of stuff? When's that going to happen?
The agreement to agree, there's 2 parts. There was the Addison Avenue site, which includes the mortgage, where the city now is the mortgage provider for the property. And as that project would go into development, there'll be the development agreement. So we're a ways away from that going into a development agreement. But we'll certainly provide for the whole council. The old council had it before, but the new council, the ordinance and those documents, the mortgage document on Addison. On Larch, the Larch Avenue site was originally a contract that was going to be assigned to the city was going to be an assignment purchaser. Late in the game, the selling party said they wouldn't allow any assignment. So the city and the DevCom group agreed that DevCom would buy and the city would buy from DevCom in 2 steps as opposed to 1 step. We can provide those documents for the council. That original assignment agreement provided that the city, in return for the assignment or in return for the purchase of the property, at the same terms that DevCom negotiated their purchase, the city would use the services of DevCom for the design and the build. That design contract is design and build contract we're presently still working on between the engineers and the architects and the attorneys on the public side and the private side. We would wish to have that available for the council's consideration, probably through the committee process, as soon as we have our committees assigned. But the approvals that the council of the past made will make copies of all of that for everybody again, and for the new council for the first time.
Thanks, City Manager Borchert. Alderman Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Borchert. That's what I was looking for. I did want to add, and I didn't add into my last comments, that I think it's a real testament to the hard work of city staff and the council and the people of Elmhurst that, we hear every day about these tough economic times we're in, yet here's a developer who's willing to invest in our city and has quite a progressive plan. I've lived in town all my life, and parking has always been a problem. And here's a developer that's willing to dig in, roll up his sleeves, work with the city council to get this done, and add, by my count, 700 parking spots to downtown Elmhurst. That's pretty incredible. So I appreciate what the developer's doing. I think he does need to keep us included, but the quicker we can get to this development in a controlled manner, I'm all for it. And I just want to say thanks for coming.
Point well taken, Alderman Morley. Anybody else? All right. Very nice. Thank you very much, Mr. Hollingsworth.
Council, thank you so much for having us this evening.
Thanks, Mr. Hiffman, too. The other job. All right. Next on the agenda is item 4, announcements. Anybody have any announcements for today? I do have one. This Sunday, the Annie Ryan Run is taking place right at the Prairie Path, so great cause for a family that has seen a lot of tragedy and is trying to turn their tragedy into help for other children with brain tumors. So if you're out and about, it's a great event. I'll be out there. I'll be firing the gun to start the run. It's this Sunday over at the Prairie Path. Before we adjourn, I would just like to say that I think tonight's vote and replacement for our new city attorney was a decision that I felt was a professional one. Mr. Kubisa has served our town for 23 years, and he's done it in a well-respected and professional way. So we wish him well, and we look forward to the transition as expeditiously as possible. And I appreciate everyone's consideration in making this decision tonight. I think this is a good start in bringing new leadership on and taking our council in the right direction. So I appreciate everybody's consideration with that. At this point, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn. Alderman Brown? Alderman Kennedy? All in favor?
Didn't hear the second.
Second was Alderman Kennedy. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? We're adjourned.